ETFs or exchange traded funds are a great way to invest. They offer instant diversification. You get access to hundreds or even thousands of stocks with one transaction. They're relatively low fee, and fees tend to just keep on getting lower as there's more and more competition in the space. But linked to that more competition, there's just now so many different ETFs to choose from. So how do you go about finding the best ETF for you? Well, in part one of this video, I showed you all the things you need to consider when picking between ETFs, everything from fees, replication method, fund size, and I showed you a few different websites that you can use to get all the details you need. If you haven't watched that video, be sure to check it out. But in this video, I want to show you how you can use my ETF cheat sheet that I put together to actually find and compare ETFs with ease, and it can be your starting point for further research to help you find ETFs for you then to go look at. Go on Just ETF, go on these other websites and find out all the details and make an informed decision. We're not going to faff around with this one. I'm going to jump straight into it and show you how to use this sheet and make the most of it. So once you're on it, the first tab will be the disclaimer slide. So like with anything, you can't just rely on this spreadsheet to form any investment decision. Always remember that when investing, your capital is at risk and you may get back less than invested. And importantly, past performance is no guarantee of future results. Always remember that just because an ETF has performed well in the past does not mean it'll be the best performing going forward. And whilst I do my best to keep things accurate on this spreadsheet, you should always cross-check things yourself. And the other important thing here is the instructions. So you can make your own copy of this because obviously by default it's view only. You can't edit it. But if you simply go File in the top left and make a copy, you'll then be able to save your own copy of the sheet, and from there you can edit it, apply filters, do whatever you want. So we're going to jump straight into the developed markets tab here. So you can see at the bottom, I've split it into different categories of ETF: developed markets, emerging markets, global, USA, UK. So let's go developed markets. Let's explain the columns here. So first of all, we have the ETF name. We then have the ticker, which is the unique combination of letters or numbers that identifies that ETF. LON, London, that just means these are all listed on the London Stock Exchange. So read this as London Stock Exchange and then the ticker of the ETF. Then we simply have the provider logo. So we have ETFs by all sorts of different providers on here. The index, the ETF track. So this is useful if you want to then Google that index and learn more about that index. I do have a very brief description here showing you what the ETF does. So this one, for example, seeks to track the performance of large and mid-cap companies in 25 developed countries. We then have distribution policy. So that's how it handles dividends. Distributing, the dividends are paid out to shareholders, and then accumulating, the dividends are automatically retained within the fund, reinvested automatically, which in turn pushes up the share price. We then have fund domiciles, so where the ETF is based from a legal and regulatory perspective. This is important because domiciles can impact the withholding tax that ETF pays and the withholding tax you pay as an investor in that ETF. Ireland is usually favourable, and that's why you'll see why most ETFs are domiciled in Ireland for that reason. We then have the replication method, so how the ETF actually seeks to replicate the index. There's physical full replication, sampling, and synthetic. Check out my previous video for full descriptions of what these actually mean. Fund launch date, so how old the fund actually is. Total expense ratio. Dividend frequency, if it is a distributing ETF, how often it pays out dividends, dividend yield, the total return. So for both distributing and accumulation ETFs, total return is the share price plus dividends received. I've done total return here because distributing ETFs, you can't forget that those distributions are part of your total return. And then volatility, that's a measure of annualized price fluctuations. So the higher the number, the greater the degree of annualized price fluctuations. And the more price fluctuations, you could say, the riskier that ETF has been to hold because it's fluctuating more and more. The greater the fluctuations, the more risky. So what you can do is you can use the filters at the top to sort by cheapest to most expensive, for example. So let's say with developed markets, you want to search for the cheapest ETF. The cheapest developed markets ETF on this spreadsheet is the L&G Global Equity ETF. Of course, remember this is not a list of every single possible developed markets ETF, but it is a selection of popular choices to help you with your research. You might want to also filter by and only include accumulating ETFs because you're not bothered about distributing. And you can just play around with these filters and organize it however you want. And just to reiterate, if you do search by total return to get the one that's performed the best, please do always remember past performance does not guarantee future results. This is just to give you an idea. So going through the rest, emerging markets, we've got different emerging markets ETFs here. One's by Vanguard, iShares Wisdom Tree. Global, there's actually less global ETFs than you might think. There's the Vanguard, Invesco, iShares, and SPDR global ETFs, market cap weighted ones. And then there's the FTSE All World High Dividend Yield from Vanguard. So global is both developed and emerging markets in one ETF. The USA sheet, I think, has the most ETFs on it. So there's a lot of ETFs on here. I've done a few S&P 500 ETFs. For most of the others, I've only included a couple ETFs per index, but because the S&P 500 is such a popular index, I have included quite a few popular ETFs, with the cheapest S&P 500 ETF at the moment being this SPDR one, 0.03%. But I've also got Nasdaq 100, a couple sector ETFs and growth ETFs for you to compare as well. And then UK, we have FTSE 100, FTSE 250, and a couple popular dividend ETFs. I also have a glossary, so if you're unsure about what any of these terms mean, you can go back to my previous video, part 1, or also you can just use this glossary, which will hopefully be quite helpful. The README gives you some limitations of this spreadsheet. So, for example, one limitation, as I've said a few times, past performance does not guarantee future results. Another limitation is quarterly updates. Now, this might change going forward. I'm thinking of updating this monthly going forward. So the performance, volatility, and dividend yield will be updated monthly. So it should be more useful more frequently to get updated figures. Of course, for the most updated figures, you need to do your own research. The point is, this can just be a starting point to identify some ETFs as candidates for further research. Not all ETFs included, data reliant on sources. It doesn't matter how well the sheet is maintained. If the sources are wrong, then this is going to be wrong. And I get the past performance, volatility, and dividend yield from just ETF.com. And then not all data included. That's when you need to do your own research. Stuff like assets under management, a number of holdings is not included, just to keep the spreadsheet nice and concise. And the most important FAQ here, can I request an ETF to be added? Yes, if you think there's a popular ETF that would be good to add to the comparison sheet, then let me know and I can add it on the next update. And then we have the change log. So when I last updated the total return, dividend yield, volatility, and when any ETFs were added or removed from the sheet. It's all here. So you can see the last time I updated it was the 19th of February. And as I say, going forward, I'm going to try and update it every month. So I hope that guide was helpful. As I mentioned, be sure to check out part 1 to find out how to research ETFs and the websites that I use to get more details. But I do hope this helps you with that research process. And all you have to do to get access to it is sign up to my newsletter via the link in the description. If you enjoy this content, be sure to like and subscribe and comment below with any topics you want me to. Thank you for watching.